Thank you, Mr. Chair and Ranking Member Johnson, for holding this hearing. To the families and loved ones of the people we have lost to Boeing safety failures, our condolences, and thank you for continuing to advocate for your loved ones and for airline safety generally and for the safety of the public. Mr. Calhoun, it seems like every other day news breaks of a new problem or safety concern with Boeing aircraft. In just the last week, there has been one news story about questionable titanium in your supply chain and another story about incorrectly installed fasteners with your new 787 Dreamliners. There have been major problems with Boeing's manufacturing, assembly, and quality assurance. As Senator Blumenthal noted, Americans built the first ever airplanes more than a century ago. But now, for the first time in decades, Americans are more and more nervous about flying your American-made planes. That breakdown in trust is a remarkable failure for your company, and I'm concerned that it stems from a decision to put profits ahead of safety. So what are the root causes of this systemic failure? How are you going to fix it? And who should we hold accountable? Does the buck stop with you or with somebody else?
Senator Hassan, I appreciate the question. And like you, I get the media input every day, and I see a Boeing description of the airplane. Two out of every 3 airplanes that fly in this country are Boeing airplanes. Right. The contributing causes to most everything outside of the Alaska accident relate to a variety of inputs that are downstream with respect to operating and maintenance and et cetera with an airplane. Alaska was a manufacturing defect. I'm not aware of any others that were. And we cannot allow one unsafe airplane to leave our factory. And so we are totally focused on everything that may have contributed to that. I will say this, every issue that occurs out in the field with an airplane, our industry doesn't actually point fingers at each other. We all rally around whatever happened. And if the manufacturer can contribute to that, to fixing that once and for all, we will.
So let me just follow up here, because you have talked about a culture of safety and quality. You say that's what we talk about, and I hear you talking about it. But what we've been trying to get to is how is it that you had a 2020 failure, a 2024 failure, the failures I've just read about, so there were 737 failures, now these 787 ones. You talk about safety and culture, but you aren't answering the question about what the root causes are here. How do you make sure that safety and culture, safety and quality is your product as opposed to your words?
Well, we do, and I will always refer to the record with respect to airplane safety. 2023, IATA is the international organization that compiles all the information with respect to safety incidents, was the safest year on record. Boeing's a large part of that.
I understand that, and what I'm going to ask you to do is produce to us the documents that you have or the understanding you have of what are the root causes of the safety problems your company has had. Because I appreciate the context and I appreciate the answer, but as the chair and the ranking member have noted, we have limited time here. So I'm going to move on to my next question, but what I would assume now 4 years after the 737 MCAS issue, what I would assume is by now you would have identified root causes for some of these safety problems. And what I'm not hearing is an answer back. Let me move on to another issue, which is that one of whistleblower protection. In April, a Boeing engineer told this committee that he raised safety concerns with leadership at Boeing about some of the company's manufacturing processes. He told us that Boeing management then retaliated against him for raising those safety concerns. He went so far as to tell us that he felt that his physical safety had been threatened. Not only has your company failed to uphold the highest safety standards, it appears that Boeing has fostered a culture that censors people who try to speak up and help. So what actions have you personally taken as CEO? I heard your testimony about listening, but what actions have you personally taken as CEO to investigate instances of retaliation and intimidation at Boeing and to hold managers and leadership accountable for punishing whistleblowers?
Senator, I'll start again. with respect to leadership and culture, communication, we are always out there with respect to our policy on retaliation. Not accepted. We will take the disciplinary actions that are necessary, and we do have a process. If I get a retaliation claim, I have a team. Again, they're independent. They are meant to investigate that, and they're meant to assume that that allegation is correct. Let's go find out. They are not always determined to be correct. They are not always.
I would suggest, because you couldn't answer how many folks have been disciplined or fired for retaliation, I would suggest that a personally involved CEO might be able to get us that information, and that if you talked about the discipline that you took towards people who retaliated against whistleblowers, there might be less retaliation. Let me move on to one final issue here. News broke last week that the Federal Aviation Administration is investigating how counterfeit titanium, originally from a Chinese supplier, made its way into Boeing planes. What systemic failures allowed Boeing to not only purchase questionable titanium, but to fail to recognize that it was substandard once you had it in your possession and to install it in an aircraft? How'd that happen?
Senator, I appreciate the question. We did not purchase the titanium. A sub-tier would have purchased that titanium, and we would not be aware until they raised their hand and let us know, in which case we would help them immediately solve that problem. Back when Russia invaded Crimea, we made a determination immediately following that invasion that we would end our dependency on Russia for titanium. And we've done quite a good job. And the only other point, the material that we have seen in the parts that our vendors have notified us of has not been substandard. It has met the spec.
So, and my time is expired, but I would ask you to follow up on what product quality testing Boeing does and conducts of the materials and parts it purchases in order to verify the authenticity and safety of materials that come through the supply chain. Thank you, Mr. Chair.